This is your microphone they wanted you to have.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we just push them away. Are we okay now?
As soon as Hannah says yes.
This is Marjorie.
And this is
Alex.
Alex.
Hi, Alex. Good job.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of July 10th, 2019 to order. The first thing we need to do is approve our minutes of the meeting June 3rd, 2019. Have you all had a chance to read them, and do you see anything that's drastically wrong that needs changing?
It looks good to me. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 3rd, 2019 as submitted.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes state aye, please.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Thank you very much. All right. We will now consider the certificate of appropriateness for property located on 420 East Main, COA 2019-011.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome to our new committee members, Gretchen and Alex. This is COA 2019-011. The owner's representative, I guess, is that right? Owner representative, it's a group.
Yes, Ed
Okay.
Wellington is not here this week.
So he's out of town, so the owner's representative, who staff have met with and the architect have been working with, is out of town. So Laura Culpepper is here on their behalf, and she's also the one who's submitted some pictures that we've included on the PowerPoint that were not in your packet because we got them today. So you will see some of those here in a few minutes. And then before I go into this, I would encourage you to ask her questions because she has a lot more background on what they're wanting to do and why they're wanting to do it. And so it's better to hear it from the architect than from staff. So the short version of what they're wanting to do is remodel the front of the building. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, and just looking at the photos, the drawings. The primary facade on the structure, located at 420 East Main, is a non-contributing building to the Downtown Historic District. I'm sure we would all agree with that. It's been modified back sometime in the 70s. Historic photographs are almost non-existent. We have very few photographs of that end of East Main Street, unfortunately. We have a lot from the Cole Art Center today going west, but that's kind of where it ends. And so we do have a photo in your packet that shows that end from a distance. But they are wanting to remove the board and batten on the bottom floor. And if you look at, and I'm going to go here, if you will look at your screen or the packet in front of you, and I'll have Ms. Culpepper follow up with this, when they did demo on the inside, it seems, I'm fairly confident in saying that where the board and batten is today is originally window openings. One of the things that we had asked the owner to do was go in and do some select demo on the inside, because you can tell if it was CMU blocks that were filled in or whether it was original brick. I'm sure all of you have seen anywhere downtown where someone has had to do brick repair. It's obvious, it stands out. Even if it's 50 years old, it's still obvious. So the work that they did on the inside, the demo work they did on the inside, makes me feel fairly confident in recommending that, yes, those were originally window openings on the bottom floor. Unfortunately, we don't have the shape of the windows. We know there were large window openings based on the CMU that's put in there, but how many divisions, you just have to go with historically period appropriate at that point is what staff would recommend. And then for the second floor, they also did some demo. Let me kind of zoom through here. Oh, there we go. Thanks to Hannah, she's already plugged them in there. So this is, I'm going to flip back and forth, the inside looking out on the top floor, and there's the outside. So it's flipped. What you see on your right hand of the screen is where they're proposing to place a door, which is on the left-hand side of the screen as you're looking it up here. And then I'm going to flip back to this. Also, and this is just staff. This is the process that we typically go through in-house before we ever get here, but I think it helps in you understanding what the request is. If you look at the division of these, they kind of line up, don't they? This one goes up here. This one goes up here. typically you wouldn't frame in something this small unless it was for a door. So you have to look at the size of that opening on the second floor as well, is the same size as the bottom floor. So if that was all the evidence we would have, I would say, hey, you know, it's kind of hard to say, yes, there was a door there. But that's one of the items that we look at to say, yes, that's possible a door could be there. Now flip back to this one. It's hard to see, it's dark, but this has been filled in. This is not, this right here is not brick, where it's brick here and it's brick here. So that would be a second thing that says, yeah, there probably was a door there at one time. It's still not concrete, but you know, most of the things we look at are not open and shut. Yes, it is, or no, it isn't. Also the middle, was it the middle window? Is this the middle window?
Oh, yeah,
The
that's,
arch?
the windows, they're all kind of the same. You
Okay.
can see the arch.
So
they
there's-
were rounded windows.
One of the other things they found when they did the interior demo on the second floor is that there's an arch at the top of the window. Which one's right? I wish these monitors were about 6 inches shorter, because I'm just not that tall. So the windows they found are also arched on the top. So in your packet, what the architect has for you to consider, if you flip to this page here, you can see she provided current conditions, you know, existing, and then an option A and an option B. The option A and B were developed prior to any of the select demo. And so, looking at the photo you have up there on the screen, option B is not appropriate because of that second floor middle window being large. It would appear that the second floor window has always been that size. So what the applicant is asking for your consideration today is to remove the board and batten on the bottom floor, install large window openings as shown in option A in front of you, and then remove the stucco on the top floor, reinstall the 3 windows. You can see she already has the archway on there, a door, and a balcony. So that is the proposal for you this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, and obviously I would encourage you to ask any of Culpepper as well. Chairman?
Okay, let's have Ms. Culpepper come up. Thank you for being here. I'd like to ask something. One of the photos we were looking at a moment ago, it showed a ghost line below the windows and doors. Is that where the balcony, that dark ghost line?
You're
Okay.
talking on the exterior?
Okay, right
That
there.
dark,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I believe that's
that where
where
the
the balcony was, and it just, and there's another photo, you know, an old-timey photo, maybe we don't have that,
It's in the packet.
what's that?
It's in their packet.
Oh, it is in that
We just didn't
packet.
get it put up there.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I'm just trying to piece it together as best as I can as far as the floor structure of the balcony and you know, the spacing of everything is a little odd to me, but that's the way it was, so that's the way we will keep it. And I guess it makes sense that the doors would be in that location. The stair is right there, the existing stair, so,
Oh, so that makes
Oh.
sense.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Oh, I was gonna have a question. What, in driving by and looking at it, yeah, the stucco is up there. What are you planning, obviously the stucco is not original, but it's up there. What are you planning to do with it? Cause it looks like it's in fairly poor condition. Is this going to affect, I mean, what we're dealing with here as you change these window openings and stuff?
Yeah, well, you know, I guess it's one of those things. It'd be nice to remove it, and I can't guarantee what shape the brick is in, and that's, I guess we kind of figured we would do that if we can tell, if the contractor maybe has a way to tell if the brick is in decent shape underneath. If not, I mean, I can't make them spend the money to, but that would be ideal. If it becomes a budget issue, we may just have to leave the stucco.
Well, Well, I just noticed because stucco wasn't on here, and so I didn't know if you were thinking,
Well, it did say stucco to remain on the existing
Right.
construction.
Right.
And I heard him, thought he'd say take it off, so I guess it's in limbo. That's fine, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
so,
I was
I was-
hoping it was gonna be
Well,
removed.
if there's,
Refer to the packet.
yeah, if there's a way that we can, with some of these buildings, you just don't know. And I didn't wanna promise that because it's not my money, but
Right.
if,
well, sometimes it can happen, sometimes.
yeah,
I guess my question is, should you all start work and the stucco just starts to throw itself off the building?
Yeah.
Are you all going to leave the stucco or let it come off?
well,
That's-
I would love for the stucco to come off. And, we'll probably have to take some off just as far as attaching the roof. There might be an opportunity there to see what kind of shape the brick is in, and if it's something where maybe we just seal it, if it's, could even paint it, but I hate to paint old brick, but we just don't know.
Right.
But would you clean the stucco if you had to leave it on?
Well, if we have to and it's a budget concern, I don't know exactly what the final number is. I guess kind of wanted to just get past this hurdle first, and but if that's a question I have to have answered, I guess maybe what we could do is say that we would remove the stucco if it's acceptable to the owner price-wise, and if the brick is in good shape. But if not, all I can say is may have to paint it and make it look as nice as possible.
Well, I don't think we're asking you to try to guarantee something that you can't.
Yes, I know, well.
We all have the preference of it being on
Yes,
natural and not
right.
stucco.
I think we would all
So,
agree, right.
I think we're all in agreement about that.
Yeah.
So we would just, we'll be hoping that the stucco will just jump right off the
Yeah.
wall.
Right, and I mean, on the first floor, you could see there's brick there, but it's not original brick. The original brick is behind it. I don't know why they put kind of cheap brick in front of the old brick. It's just hard to tell.
Yeah.
That cedar siding is all in the interior, all over the place too, so.
So have you looked behind, removing board and batten on the first story, or, so
Yes.
the original brick is behind that, you're sure of that?
In between, where you see the brick, well, it's fake brick there, but
Mhm.
you can just look on the side
Okay.
and you see the original brick there.
Okay, so much like Fisher was down here.
Yeah, and it's,
Well, I thought that was wood paneling on the
well,
outside.
yeah, the wood panel is between,
Gotcha. So you're talking about the columns.
but I think, yeah, there you go, Brian. That's,
That's the bottom floor inside.
yeah. So you can see they've just infilled the big openings with CMU block. So that's what makes us, it makes us confident that those were at one point openings. And you can see the original brick in between.
Okay.
And it matches up, we measured inside and out, it matches up perfectly with the cedar paneling. So that's what used to be there.
So just to clarify, it looks like you'll be going with elevation A, because elevation
Yes.
B includes the wider window on the second floor.
Right.
Which
And of course, they would like the wider window, but I told them, chances are that's not gonna happen.
What is gonna be above, I see you have, 2/2, you have these 4-paned windows. Will that just be an infill, or is that, glass above? It's just hard to tell on your drawing. Is this, a semicircular piece
transom window,
of
or
glass?
is it-
or-
Oh, yeah, glass.
Okay, not plywood or something else, okay.
Okay. Do we have some more questions? I really am pleased that something's being done to this building.
Yeah, it needs a little TLC.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions for Ms. Culpepper, Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Chairman, to address the stucco, you have often approved staff to work with the owner or the architect in cases like this where they don't know. It's the unknown. There are several of them. You mentioned one building. There was another one that you just reviewed that's the Gauls building, and I can't think of the name of the building or the address, but one of them they were able to remove, and the other one they tried and were not. But that was another example of where you said, we would love for it to be removed. If it is not possible, please just communicate with staff and work it out that way, and you kind of blessed both avenues. And so we would encourage you to do the same thing here, is everybody would love to have it removed, but as you mentioned, it's not your authority to say you shall remove it. It's just a desire.
Right.
So if you choose to approve the request, we would ask that you just say something along the lines of, please work with staff on removal of stucco.
Okay. That sounds very reasonable.
Do I hear a motion?
For the approval of COA 2019-011 with caveat about the appropriateness, if it's possible, of stucco removal, and we're okay with it? If not, oh, that's worded so beautifully.
I'll make a motion that we approve COA 2019-011. It meets guidelines A, D, and J with the additional caveat, the architect and owner should work with staff to remove stucco should that be feasible.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor state aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you very much. And we are pleased to see something happening to that building. It's gonna be nice, I know it is. Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna discuss the implementation of site corridors.
Yes, Chairman, this
Historic districts.
is going to be a tag team approach. I offered to kind of give a little bit of an introduction, and then Hannah, who has done more research on this, is going to come up and continue that discussion. Our current city ordinance does not, I'm going to start off. This is a new topic for me as well. I'm familiar with it in terms of Austin. And there's height, and you can't extend this way or this way in order to preserve the view of the Capitol. That's kind of the best example I can give you. But you hear it over and over again, we are not the pretty police, right? So we don't enforce color. That's also part of the reason why we don't enforce landscaping. There are some areas that have landscaping ordinances, but there are very few that have historic landscaping ordinances tied with historic districts. Do you know of any?
I don't, that's a good question.
So
I'll have to go research that.
See, there you go. So right now, you could plant, we'll use your house as an example, since you're a historic district, and sits on a corner. So he could plant a row of shrubs between the front of his house and the curb to completely obstruct the view from the public of 2 of the 4 sides of his building. Nothing in the ordinance to stop him from doing so. There is something in the ordinance that keeps him from installing an 8-foot privacy fence, wooden privacy fence that obscures the view from the public. So we kind of, because trees are viewed more of a pretty thing, because you can also remove them and no harm, no foul was done. But we don't get into whether it's an oak tree or what species of red oak or white oak or what have you. Wrought iron fences are commonly installed in front of buildings. You've approved a number of them, some of them as recently as this year, because you can see through them, right? You're not obstructing the view of the public from the public right of way. That's kind of where we have to, you see, I'm talking about the view from the public right of way, which is your main authority. Some of this, Chairman, I know is not new to some of you, but we also have new members. So things that are behind your building are still reviewable. Even though they may not be viewable from the public right-of-way, they're still reviewable by you because it's exterior changes to the property, but they have much more leeway. So if we're talking about obscuring the front of his house, it's the character defining facade of his house, that's kind of right up your alley. But we don't have any avenue to enforce statues or landscaping. So that's where this comes from, the site corridor idea. This is not an action item. This is a discussion item. This is staff putting this before you to hear feedback, because we haven't done any research on what an ordinance would look like here, because we don't want to do all that work and then you say, go away, we don't want to do that. Well, okay, great, not a problem. You're the boss. So having kind of laid the groundwork for what we're going to talk about, Hannah will come up, and she just returned today is her first day back from vacation, by the way. Monday was my first day, so we're a little slow on getting some of these together.
I don't have too much to add. As Brian said, I had done more research on it, but that was a week ago before I went on vacation. So it's something that places will do. Typically, they're used for rural landscapes, a protected view shed, and it's basically everything you can see from a certain spot. And so the example of the Capitol in Austin, there are 30 views of the Capitol that are protected. So one example is from a cemetery. There's a perfect view of it. You can't build anything that would obstruct that view at all. And so it's a little different. It's harder to find examples of historic districts because that's, an entire street or several streets. And so it would have to be worded a little bit differently. But it would be much more limiting than our current ordinance. And like Brian said, things that typically we would have no issue with because they're not permanent, like a statue, it would have to be approved. And so I don't know, it would just require a lot of research, and so that is something we can look into, because like I said, it's usually used for a battlefield or a farm, a rural landscape like that. So this is just sort of to get the ball rolling on this, if it's something that we would even want to pursue. And obviously we all love Washington Square Historic District, but it's just something to think about.
So the idea kind of, is when it comes to statues, for example, lawn art. I have a pig, I have a rooster, I have a rabbit, and a frog at my house. I'm not in a historic district, but all of those items sit in the front of my property. And so if we look at something like this, you're going to need to give us guidance on, is a rabbit that's this tall obstructing the view of the house? Because we can't just say statues. We can't just say landscaping.
Right.
So that may help you in your discussion.
And I would suggest maybe driving down Mound Street or within the historic district and just looking at what you see and getting some ideas that way.
Are you all thinking, because we actually have 5 historic districts, are you thinking for all 5, or were you thinking, you mentioned Washington Square? Or?
It just depends on what we want to do.
It can be district specific. It's hard to impede the view in the Zion Hill district. Right, so
Well, we could do it.
You can, but it would be a different set of standards for the Zion Hill district, where they're 5 feet back from the curb and 10 feet from each building,
Right.
than it is, and that's the reason I was picking on your fellow member up here, because he's in that Washington Square district and there's much more room between them. Do you pick a building like TJR and say, we're gonna, and OUB, and kind of, we're gonna protect this court, or Mound Street Statue Trail, or, it doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be every building in a historic district. And that's why I love the example that Hannah gave of the Capitol. There are how many views?
30 protected views, and which is in your packet, the red
Yeah.
sunburst or whatever.
So there are specific corridors that you say, this is something that we want to preserve.
I would say, and this came up quite a few years ago, but there was a application that wanted to do some work to the downtown buildings between the Fredonia Hotel and downtown. Then the view, and part of the application was that would be viewable from the Fredonia, but it would also have ended up blocking the view of the Lone Star building, which to me is actually kind of our equivalent of the Capitol, something that's up above and over. And, you know, it's an important historic, you know, it's part of Nacogdoches. You look and there's the big Lone Star. So that kind of came up, not as, one's gonna be looking from the Fredonia towards the historic Lone Star, and there's gonna be this other thing in the way. So, I mean, this type of thing has come up, just not very often.
Do you know what year that was?
I can find it.
Okay. Because that'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah, it was Tracy Lassiter's application for the coffee cup with the.
Oh, okay, that was
Spirit.
recent.
That was the-
Oh, I remember that.
That's right.
And it was gonna be smack in the view.
The sign projecting above the building.
Mhm.
Right, I remember that.
So,
Well, we don't get many skyscrapers. A lot of times these protected
Yeah.
views are so that, you know,
from
we'll
street.
get a skyscraper built,
yeah.
but
Yeah, and I think mostly what we would be looking at is street level views of street, but I think it's important to also consider that we do actually have a few things that are standouts.
right.
I'll give you another example, since we have a member of Friends of Historic NAC, a board member of Tony right here. The statue that sits on the corner of, is it Hughes and Mound at the fraternity
Mhm.
house? That's a permanent statue. So that one required your approval. It wasn't my example of a rabbit,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, 10 inches tall, sitting there, that I can pick it up and you never know it was there.
Right.
Those are still reviewed. I
Mhm.
mean, that is reviewed because it's a permanent item. And so we're looking at the ones that are more of the yard art type. There are some examples on Mound Street today.
Yeah.
Or there's an example of one on Mound Street today. The Gribbles,
The
former
Gribbles
home.
old house
Oh.
with all the horses and the longhorn
The
and.
gorillas and the wind chimes and, you know, is that something that you want to say, you need to come talk to us first? Viewability of the.
Those are movable, cause
Yeah.
aren't they for sale? So.
Well, that's what this-
I'm not for them, but I mean, I'm just trying to think about the fact that they're not a permanent installation, I assume.
Well, and that's why they haven't been reviewed. And that's part of what this discussion is do you want to go down that road, but picking
It might be a
specific
tricky
areas.
road to go down, quite honestly.
Well,
Bumpy, bumpy.
Yes, very bumpy.
um,
Especially if they're for sale and they're movable.
And
I don't
it
know,
is
they're not
zoned
really
for a shop.
historic, but they do make you look at the house. Cause you're going, my granddaughter said, Grammy, look, horses. I'm driving there. But yeah,
Cause we're not arbiters of taste.
But the OUB is on
Yes.
its own, and you look, and it was
Yes.
built on hill. Well,
Right.
Hill is what's left.
Yes.
You know, for a purpose.
So we won't
If you-
allow any gorillas in front of it.
Yes.
Can we make that a rule?
No, then all the kids would have to leave. I mean, it's a good thing to think about. Do we
Yeah,
have,
it
can
is.
we
It
is.
think about this? We don't
Well,
have
that's,
to-
that's,
we
the-
don't have to
that's
make
kind
a
of the
decision
point.
today.
is, You can't make a decision today, because it's a discussion item.
Good,
Instead of an
good.
action item. We didn't want Carol to be real passionate about it and make a motion that says, we shall outlaw all horses.
All gorillas.
well, I remember when they started the Capitol corridors, because Austin was just growing like crazy. And, yeah, all these tall buildings
Right.
were going up or planning on going up, and this whole corridor thing came into being. And, I lived up in Marshall before I moved down here to NAC, and we were all concerned about it because we felt that you should be able to see the Capitol. And so, yeah, it was quite a fight to get those too.
Oh, I'm
It
sure.
was.
Well, and remember, Texas is a very strong property rights
Oh,
state.
yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
And think about the wonderful conversations you have all had, I'm sure, when you have voted to deny something. We hear them more often than you do because they view us as the evil people who said no.
Mhm.
We're just presenting it and you get to say no. But, you know, I'm not saying that to discourage you.
No.
But that's something
But
that
it
you
is the
consider.
truth, yes.
Is, you know, we are in a strong property rights state, and
Right.
is something that would be easy to pass in Wisconsin and hard in Texas? I don't know.
I think you're right there.
And I don't know what Wisconsin's laws are like, you just figure those.
I don't either.
So Chairman, if there's any guidance for us, you know, we are not interested or we are interested, I mean, you know, you can, it's not a motion, but, you know, staff go forth and do X, is what we would like.
Oh, I think we all should think about it, do a little research, study about it.
I was gonna ask, or have you looked into other cities that might have similar
Yes.
view sheds and corridors?
Yes, none of them are really comparable that I've found yet.
Yeah.
We're talking, you know, in Virginia, where there's entire districts.
Or what about Texas? I mean, has anybody ever, other than Austin, obviously, but small
so
towns?
that's the main example.
Mhm.
It's something I can look into more, and I also looked for specific examples of statues, and I did find one that was sort of a funny read. I don't know if Brian ever got around to reading that one, but yeah, it's just something that we'll look into more
Mhm.
if it's something y'all want to pursue.
And we also reached out to, so Nacogdoches is a certified local government community, CLG, and there is a CLG rep, too many acronyms, I'm sorry, but CLG rep at THC, and we reached out to them and asked, and they said, we have no idea. Also,
As did NAPC, yeah.
so also reached out to the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and to the architectural reviewer with THC that oversees our region, and all of them said, not a clue where to tell you to go. I mean, so it's, this would be unique from what we found so far. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist somewhere.
Right.
We just haven't found one.
Besides Austin, per se.
And so the examples that Hannah gave were site specific. I mean, it was a
Right.
site.
Mhm.
Our thought was, is it something that you want to do for a district or a road? So we're not looking at, I mean, you could look at just Washington Square, not the historic district, but the square itself.
Mhm.
Or you could say the Washington Square Historic District or the downtown historic district, you know. Kind of, we need some parameters, but I would discourage you from doing all districts.
Yeah, you seem to find restrictions in coastal communities, but they're not, you know, in historic districts, but, you know, to preserve the view of the ocean, that type of thing. But this is tricky.
And this obviously has come up because of landscaping and temporary statues.
Mhm.
You know, we probably wouldn't have dreamt to even have this discussion had we not seen these issues and said, you know, let's discuss this with HLPC. I mean, there's always a reason why we bring things to you, and that's what we're looking at today. So don't go plant a bunch of trees because we know where you got the idea.
Order them tomorrow.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess that gives us all something to think about. So
All right.
I guess this meeting is adjourned.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hey Hannah, can I ask you now that we're officially done and I'm putting on my friend hat?
And I'm sure our two
I
new
haven't
members have
been by
seen,
there to look at the
have seen at
horses
some
and
point that